Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. This is the France 24 debate. We're looking at what the massacre that happened at that platinum mine in South Africa last week means for post-apartheid South Africa. With us talking about it from Johannesburg, Eusebius McKaiser of the Wits Center for Ethics at Witwatersrand University. From Cape Town, community developer and blogger Saifo January is with us. Sean Jacobs, founder of the influential Africa is a Country blog. He teaches at the New School in New York City, joins us. And here in our studio, Africa editor from France 24, Ebba Kalando. Welcome back to all of you. Before the break, we were discussing how all of this was being handled by South Africa's president. He's gone in for criticism in some quarters. In fact, seizing the moment, the ousted leader of the ANC's youth wing, Zuma's rival, Julius Malema.
A responsible president says to the police, you must keep order, but please act with restraint. He says to them, use a maximum force. He has presided over the killing of our people, and therefore he must step down. Not even apartheid government killed so many people.
Now, Julius Malema has been expelled from the ANC, but there is a big ANC Congress coming up at the end of the year. Ebba Kalando, on the heels of all of this, is his job safe?
The president's? Let's just say this commission of inquiry, a lot will run on it, but whatever happens in December at the ANC conference, it's true that COSATU, which is the umbrella body of all the trade unions, has to move very fast to be able to get back to the bargaining processes that Eusebius was talking about, that those need to change, those inherently have to change. And the results of what happened in Lonman is one of the reasons why. Whether the president's job is still safe because of this?
All right, let's ask Saifo January. What are your thoughts on that?
Firstly, this has to be looked at in two ways. For one, the comments around Malema and the support that he gets around these comments is just basically you can track them back to politics and not really read too much into them, because he has a question of whether will he at the conference, once he's raised his question of reviewing of his sentence or expulsion. It's centered around that as well. Over and above that, I don't think it will draw much attention to all the other issues other than that project. In terms of the future of the president, it's politics. Anything is possible, but at present, he seems to be doing quite well in terms of mobilizing the support around him to ensure it doesn't come to that.
Even in the places that you visit in Cape Town?
Around Cape Town, it's a debatable issue, but so far we've been able to see him strings here and there. For instance, whenever the youth league around Cape Town was raising issues around education, we were quickly to pull those strings to ensure that they leave that debate for now, because there is the issue of Limpopo. So by continuing the debate, they are also in a way dragging the publicity around Limpopo. So in a way, there are still ways in which manages to pull the strings here and there.
Eusebius McKaiser, your thoughts on the way South Africa is evolving now politically from all this?
Look, I think that, if I was a betting man, I would say that President Zuma still has very good odds of being re-elected for another term as ANC president and from their country's president at the end of this year. That's not necessarily because he's brilliant or is reacting to a crisis like this one as best as one who would like a statesman to react. It's just that you've got to separate the question from how is the man getting on as a statesman from the question, what are the dynamics internal to the ANC that determine who gets the presidency? And those are two very different things. So often people will see Jacob Zuma, the president, falter and being clumsy, not having clear policy positions of his own, arriving late, perhaps, as the other panelists said, delivering an inappropriately themed speech. All of those things could be true, but they're not the factors that determine internal to the ANC voting constituency who becomes president or not. And I would say that President Jacob Zuma is a better tactical politician inside his ruling party than he is head of state.
And how? Okay, so you're that's inside of the ANC. How does South Africa as a whole view all of this then?
I think the country is in deep shock, to be honest. I think that many people feel like the images we've seen over the last few days are horribly reminiscent of a pre-democratic era, and yet the lives of black people in a post-democratic South Africa seem to be meaning as little to the police as might have been the case in the 1980s. So make no mistakes here. On a purely emotional level, I mean, I've got hundreds of people calling me every night as a talk show host, political analysts who switch mode of talking from analysis to being empathetic towards people, the same with many journalists. So I think we've all been deeply shocked by what has happened, and no one here is blameless. The mining bosses have been conspicuously absent. The competing unions haven't sorted out their political differences and are culpable here. And on top of that, as a society, beyond the immediate stakeholders, we are also culpable. We've never resolved the question of inequality, and beyond that, we've never talked about the culture of violence that is so part of the social fabric of South Africa. All of those factors mean that there's no one in this nexus who comes out unscathed.
All right, so we'll see how much, whether Jacob Zuma comes out again unscathed at the end of the year in South Africa. Ebba Kalando?
But it does present an opportunity, a national tragedy on this scale. And like Eusebius was saying, nobody is blameless. I don't think any of the constituencies that are involved and have interests and affected by this incident will come out unscathed. But what it does present is an opportunity for the trade unions, whether the rival factions or the mother body of COSATU, to be able to go back to its internal infrastructure and see what needs to be retweaked so that their interests, their positions as guardians to protect the rights of the workers,
all right,
is reinforced.
We are joined by New York City. Sean Jacobs, thanks for being with us. Sean, at this point in the discussion, it seems, listening to all of our panel, that the ANC still remains the only game in town.
Can you just repeat that question again?
It seems as though the solution for who brings things forward politically in South Africa can only come from within the ANC at this point.
I mean, I'm not sure if I heard it in the entirety, but I think it is true that the ANC is definitely still the sort of only game in town, and whatever how the ANC resolves this, or the ANC equaling the government resolves this, that's the way to go. I think I heard a little bit of the sort of the end of the previous discussion between your guests, and I think it's important not to once again sort of make this out as like everybody is at fault. I think what's at fault in South Africa, as anybody with a very little knowledge or who's gone there will tell you, is that there is massive inequality in South Africa, that mine workers or workers in general are underpaid, that people are generally fed up with this kind of deal. Post-apartheid meant that somehow they would be better off, but they still live, if you look at, say, the case of Lonman, people are living in a squatter camp right next to a platinum mine that's supplying the world with, I think, almost 2/3 of platinum output platinum output. So there's something wrong with that. And I think if we again gonna say, well, the ANC must solve this, or the ANC is the one that can resolve this, I think that's part of the solution, because the ANC is the government, the ANC is the dominating political force in South Africa. But I think increasingly what we're not taking into account is that people are also saying goodbye to that kind of politics. It's very local at the moment, it's very disparate, but there is people beginning to ask, is there something beyond this politics of the ANC?
And what is beyond the politics of the ANC? Is it a discourse that says, well, let's just nationalize the mines? How do you get more of that wealth, Sean, to the hands of those people living in those squatter camps?
I mean, the discourse about the nationalization of mines, unfortunately, is kind of dominated by people who are also trying to get access to to making money. These are people inside the ANC who see the ANC as a vehicle to making money. I mean, Julius Malema, as much as he turns up today and sympathizes and shows he's there and he makes speeches that if you follow him on Twitter, comes out sort of on the political extreme and he's voicing the frustrations of these people, in the end, Julius Malema, it's about Julius Malema. So the discourse about nationalization of the mines, I'm not sure if that's if the ANC nationalizes the mines, that's going to solve it. We know about what happens when mines are nationalized. We know about corruption that goes along with it. I think what people are talking about is, look, if people are paid well, and I saw the figure today that the 12,500 rand, that the mine workers are demanding in South Africa, that's equivalent to the median income of a white South African. So clearly, people are saying, we don't want to nationalize things. We would like work. We would like to have fair pay. This got to this point, I think, partly because there was desperation around that situation.
And again, a reminder, Eusebius McKaiser, that it's not an easy job working underground in 60-degree heat. All right, we seem to have lost Eusebius McKaiser there from Johannesburg. Ebbe Kalando, mining, one of the toughest jobs in the world all over, not just in South Africa. Redistributing the wealth, though, it's a conversation that's going on throughout Africa.
But in a country like South Africa, where mining is at the heart of the structural inequalities that people experience today, and after more than 2 generations of apartheid in South Africa, to undo the structural wrongs of being able to give access to opportunity, to be able to give the opportunity for people to have alternatives to having to be a rock driller in Rustenburg, in Johannesburg. These are very, very slow and very, very complex issues that go with so many parallel problems that South Africa since 1994 has had to address. And these are some of the bugbears that the government will have to deal with over a long period of time. But what is clear is that the mine workers are desperate now and they don't want to wait.
How could post-apartheid South Africa do better? It's a question we put to you on the France 24 Debate Facebook page. Here's what Christian wrote. Simple. Don't get fat off the backs of others. What's your reaction when you hear that comment, Sean Jacobs?
Of course, my sort of gut feeling is to say yes, that is true, that this is definitely, if you look at just pure numbers, that people are quoting, if you do a simple search of sort of reputable newspaper, or where you can find numbers on shares or the earnings of the bosses or the managers or the board members of Lonmin, you'll find that the managers are paid 400 times more than the average worker in South Africa. Compare that to, say, what these similar type of work an Australian miner would get. It is 4 or 5 times more than what the South African miner gets for the same kind of work. So there's definitely a disparity that people in South Africa have made, whether it's Anglo, De Beers, etc., have made money of South African workers, particularly black workers, for hundreds of years. People have, numbers have been quoted up to 100,000 men have died in the mines, respiratory diseases. This is, I think, where this frustration comes from. The National Union of Mine Workers was seen as representing the interests of those workers and making their lives better. They got caught up in the politics of South Africa today, which is increasingly about leadership struggles, etc. And I think it's out of that frustration that the strike, etc., around Lonmin grew, but it's not just with the ANC. It's not just with people like Cyril Ramaphosa, who used to be in the unions and now works for the mines. But it's increasingly with wanting to get a decent wage, wanting to live well. As your earlier guest said, it's of course it's complex, etc. But I think it's also very clear. People are not being paid well. People are not getting the respect as a worker in South Africa. There's a long history, I think, in South Africa of the way that particularly black workers and black people are treated. And people say, look, we've voted in a government, a democratic government that looks like us, that has rhetoric that sounds progressive and sounds in our interest, but it's not happening. And that reaction that you see on Facebook, that's perhaps some of the access to the internet and so on. But I think that expresses that kind of frustration.
Eusebius McKaiser, is this the wake-up call that will help perhaps redress those imbalances?
I certainly hope so. I think the wake-up call is that, and I agree with everything that Sean has said, a way of explaining the factors that go into the kind of disillusionment from that comment. But it is a wake-up call. I think the ANC until now has been able to rely very much on the loyalty of voters, and voters have almost been somewhat schizophrenic. They complain between elections, and then they are loyal during the election year because of the brand ANC. But if the government doesn't respond to this opportunity to show that it can actually comfortably use the power instead of looking so uncomfortable while in government, then I think brand ANC is going to weaken, and it will no longer be able to rely on an uncritical vote from the South African voters.
Ebba Kalando, the rest of the continent, though, for now, for all of the problems we've just been describing, they still look at South Africa with envy.
Absolutely, and why not? I don't think that an incident like this is the be-all of what South Africa is and what it represents and how people should think about it at all. This was an incident that has a long history, and it's a result of changing ideas within the mine workers fraternity and the trade unions that represent them, and that in itself on an evolutionary scale is still extremely positive.
All right, and we're going to have to unfortunately leave it there, but I want to thank you, Ebba Kalanda, for joining us. I want to thank as well Eusebius McKaiser in Johannesburg, Saifo January for joining us from Cape Town, and in New York, Sean Jacobs. I want to thank you, of course, for being with us here in the France 24 debate.
Audiovisuel Extérieur de la France is now the world's leading French media group. Every day, France 24, Monte Carlo Doualiya and RFI combine their efforts and expertise to bring you all the news. In just 1 year, France 24's weekly audience has increased by 50%. Meanwhile, RFI has seen its listening figures jump from 37 to 40 million. And during the same period, the number of Monte Carlo Doualiya listeners has gone from 5 to 8 million. In 2011, we had 94 million listeners and viewers. Thank you.